Our ancestors lived deeply connected to the spirit realms. This is how they received medicine and wisdom. And the colonizer knew this. This is why they demonized us for listening to the spirits. They knew it was a source of great power. And this is why it is time to reclaim. Saludos, I'm Dr.Rosales. I'm a seer, a medicine woman, and a counseling psychology PhD. If you've been feeling called to spiritual protection, but have been feeling lost and maybe even afraid, this video is for you. The first teaching is that spiritual protection is necessary for these times. It is actually non-negotiable. And the reason why it is non-negotiable is because we are living in a time where there is immense violence. We are actually also aware to the level of violence that is here. Colonization can no longer be denied. We understand on a mass scale that this is not a thing of the past, that colonization has been normalized. And so many of us are aware of this violence. And so we are seeing it, we are feeling it, and we need spiritual protection to be able to fight against it, to be able to stand in our power. When we are just aware of the violence and we are not grounded in our Mother Earth and in our power, then we become debilitated. We may feel immense fear. We may feel immense anxiety. And so we become disempowered. And this is the intention. This is the intention of this level of violence. The colonial capitalist patriarchy seeks to intimidate us, seeks to get us to give up and concede power. But these times are here for us to restore harmony and balance in the world. And what is going to help us do that is to call back our spirit, to reclaim our ancestral spirituality, to also invoke in spiritual protection grounded in our Earth Mother and the ancestors. This is what is needed to bring forth the prophecies. If you've benefited from what I've shared today, I want to invite you to join my mailing list in the link in description, where you will receive a guided meditation, a guided journal workbook, and weekly messages to support you on your decolonial and spiritual journey. The second teaching is the importance of calling back our soul from the colonial capitalist patriarchy. It is important to understand that colonization is spiritual warfare, and it also creates immense violence, not just in the material world, physically, but also to our spirit. Eduardo Duran speaks about colonization and the impact of colonization as creating soul loss. Many indigenous nations believe that when we experience trauma, either personally or collectively, that part of what happens when we experience trauma is that parts of our soul leave our body. And this is because our soul becomes afraid. It's a way of sort of coping with the violence that we experience. And so in this time, we are experiencing that on a global scale. Many are experiencing soul loss by the level of violence that the colonial capitalist patriarchy is inflicting. And so this is also calling us to reclaim our soul's pieces, to call back our spirit from the colonial capitalist patriarchy. If we are going to confront the colonial capitalist patriarchy, if we are going to do our decolonial work, and we understand that we are, then we also need to do the spiritual work. And part of this spiritual work is to call back your soul's pieces. And so here, I want to invite you in this moment to begin to do that, to maybe even think of the recent images that you've seen through the genocides that are happening at this time. Maybe even the images, the experiences you've had, the stories you've witnessed, and what you've felt. And to begin to call back your soul from that trauma, to begin to call back your soul from the colonial capitalist patriarchy, to maybe even begin to see your soul becoming more whole and those soul's pieces coming back into your body, calling them in, and understanding that this is important for you, for your lineage, but also for the greater collective, that it is so important for us to be standing in our power, to be as integrated as possible in our mind and our body and our spirit, both personally and collectively. This calling back our soul's pieces begins to allow for more spiritual protection, because our soul is no longer floating. We are no longer disconnected and fragmented. We begin to be whole, and this allows for your life force to return to you, for your aura to begin to feel more protected. And so again, being empowered both personally and collectively at the level of the soul will allow us to meet these times. The third teaching is ways that you can begin to invoke spiritual protection. These are simple ways that you can begin to cultivate spiritual protection. And the first is to feel confident in the visions and the dreams that you are already receiving. What I am saying is that the colonizer indoctrinated us to not just demonize our spirituality and the way that we receive messages from spirit, but it also taught us to devalue these messages, to devalue the ways that we are called to work with the spirit realms. And so firstly, I invite you to feeling more confident in what you are already receiving, in what your ancestors are already sharing with you, in perhaps the practices that you are already called to, and to also value them. Part of the harm of New Age spirituality is that we think that spiritual protection and spirituality has to be elaborate and has to be big and has to be a performance. And true spirituality is actually the opposite of that. It is simple, and it is in the simplicity and practicing it consistently that we experience the depth of connection and the depth of protection. And so trusting and practicing and valuing what you are already receiving is important. Another way that we can invoke in spiritual protection relates to us calling back our soul. It's also being firm and fierce in our spirit, to not back down and not be intimidated by the colonial empire, to invoke in those ancestors, to invoke in the spirit of the collective that is showing up to end genocide and to confront the colonial empire. When we tap into this power, our ancestral power and the power of the collective, we are also calling in protection. It is no longer us, one against many, one against this empire. We are standing together, and this also brings us the protection that we need to do our work both personally and collectively. And finally, as we call in spiritual protection, I want to remind you that our work doesn't just happen on a human level, that we also need to invoke the spirits and creation, meaning the plants and the stones and the waters and the fire, that this is all part of what is needed to call in our spirituality. They are also here to help us protect our spirit, to also bring forth the prophecies. And so to begin to do your work in connecting with these kin, our plant kin, our stone kin, so that together we create a web of protection, so that we connect to the web of life and show up for the mission, our divine collective assignment of bringing forth a better world. My hope is that from today's video, you begin to remember the importance of spiritual protection and ways that you can invoke that, so that we can feel empowered enough to meet these times, to bring forth the prophecies, and understanding that our soul is equipped and born for these times.